Victor Blackwell was a very rich man. He was so influential that he had connections in all the countries of the world. He had everything anyone could wish for: mighty houses, fancy and fleet of cars with piles of money. But even though he had all these things, he didn't feel happy. He always wondered, do the people around me really love me? Or do they just love my money? Victor had a wife, Rebecca, and two kids, Sam and Lily. But he often felt like they cared more about the things he could buy them than about him as a person. They seemed interested in his fortune, not in his feelings. His workers were also very kind to him, but was it because of his wealth? Victor had always been careful, perhaps too careful, when it came to trust. He had seen countless people come and go throughout his life: business partners, friends, acquaintances, each one interested in his wealth or the perks of being associated with him. His family, too, had always seemed to be more interested in his money than his well-being. Victor's wife, Rebecca, was beautiful and well-spoken, but she had often shown little interest in his thoughts or emotions, only in how his fortune could benefit her. His two children, Sam and Lily, were spoiled teenagers who barely acknowledged him except when they wanted something. Victor decided he needed to find out the truth, so he came up with a plan. He would pretend to die and see how everyone reacted. He wanted to know if his family and friends would miss him for who he was, or if they only cared about the things he owned. Victor called a funeral home and planned to fake his death. No one knew what he was doing. The funeral contacted his family and friends to announce his death. On the day of the funeral, Victor watched quietly from a secret spot. The room was full of people. His wife, Rebecca, was the first to arrive. She wasn't crying. Instead, she was talking about how to divide up his things and what she would get. She didn't seem sad at all, only focused on the money she might inherit. Next came Sam and Lily, Victor's children. They barely looked at the coffin. Sam was busy texting on his phone, and Lily was scrolling through social media. They didn't seem to care that their father had passed away. All they cared about was what they could get from his death. Victor felt disappointed. He had hoped they would show more emotion, but it was clear they weren't mourning for him. They were thinking only about what they could inherit. Then, something surprising happened. In the back of the room stood Thomas, one of Victor's most loyal employees. He wasn't there for the money or the inheritance. He was there because he cared about Victor as a person. Thomas didn't say anything, but his face showed real sadness. He stepped forward to take a long look at Victor's coffin and cried. Victor could see that Thomas's eyes were filled with tears. Thomas had always been kind to Victor. He had helped him with everything, worked hard, and treated him like a friend. Thomas wasn't crying because of the money. He was crying because he truly cared about Victor. Victor decided to follow Thomas outside. He wanted to see how Thomas would react when he thought he was all alone. When Thomas stepped outside to be by himself, Victor quietly walked up to him. "Thomas," Victor called softly. Thomas turned around in surprise. He couldn't believe his eyes. "Victor, you're alive?" Victor smiled gently. "Yes, I'm alive. I wanted to know if anyone really cared about me, not for my money, but for who I am. I saw how you reacted, and I know that you truly care about me as a person." Thomas was speechless for a moment. Then he finally said, "I'm so glad you're okay, Victor. I've always respected you. You treated me like family. I care about you, not for your wealth, but because you're a good person." Victor felt a wave of happiness. For the first time in a long while, he knew that someone cared about him, not because of his money, but because they loved him for who he was. Just as Victor was feeling better, he saw another familiar face, Elena, the housekeeper who had worked for him for many years. Elena was quiet and gentle, and she always treated Victor with kindness. She had been one of the few people who had never been interested in his wealth. Elena had been preparing flowers for the funeral, but when she stood by the memorial table, Victor saw her eyes well up with tears. She wasn't crying about his money or the house. She was crying because she had truly lost someone who had been kind to her. Elena quietly said to herself, "Olga, Victor, you've always treated me with kindness. You made me feel like family, and I will always be grateful for that." Victor couldn't help but smile. Elena, too, cared about him, not because of what he had, but because of who he was. Later that day, Victor decided it was time to reveal the truth to everyone. He walked back into the room where his family was. The room went silent as everyone turned to look at him in disbelief. Rebecca gasped. Sam and Lily stared, unable to comprehend what was happening. Victor's face turned bright red with anger. "Enough!" Victor's voice echoed through the room. "This is all a lie. I'm not dead. I've been watching all of you, and I have seen who truly cares for me. I wanted to know if anyone in this room cared for me, not for my money, not for my properties, but for who I am, and I saw the truth today. And I've learned something important today. Elena, Thomas, you are the only two people who showed me the true meaning of loyalty. You, who have never cared about my wealth, but have always treated me with respect and kindness." The rest of the room shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca's face turned pale, and she was too stunned to speak. Sam and Lily were too shocked to say anything about the inheritance. For the first time, Victor realized that the people who truly loved him weren't the ones who stood to inherit his fortune, but the ones who had been there for him all along. He looked at Thomas and Elena and said, "You two have shown me what real loyalty is. You didn't care about my wealth. You cared about me as a person. You treated me with kindness and respect, and I will never forget that." Rebecca and the others stayed silent. They didn't know what to say. Victor had seen their true feelings, and it wasn't pretty. They hadn't mourned him for who he was. They had only cared about his wealth. That day, Victor learned something important. He had spent his life collecting money and things, but in the end, it wasn't the things that mattered most. The people who truly cared about him weren't the ones fighting for his property, but the ones who loved him for who he was. Victor smiled as he looked at Thomas and Elena. He realized that love and loyalty come from the heart, not from what someone owns. The people who truly care for you will love you no matter what. Victor knew he would never forget what he had learned. And from that day forward, he decided to spend more time with the people who cared for him, not because of his wealth, but because of the love and loyalty they showed him. The most important things in life aren't the things we own, but the people who love us for who we are. True loyalty and love come from the heart, not from material things. And so, Victor realized that the most important things in life aren't the things we have. They are the people who care about us for who we truly are. And from that moment, he decided to spend more time with people who truly loved him, not for his riches, but because they cared about him as a friend. What part of this story touched you the most? Have you ever learned a hard lesson that changed your life? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comment section. We'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our future videos on powerful stories.